This is AndyTube, and this video is part 3 of a little series about the correct buttonholer to use on a Singer model 301 sewing machine, and it can also be used on the model 404 and 604. Now that I've shown you which is the correct buttonholer and talk to you about the parts and the function, I'm going to try and sew some buttonholes here for you so we can see how it actually works. And for my demonstration, I'm going to be following the instructions of the instruction manual that Singer sent out with this. And because I don't sew and have never really done it, that's what I'm going to use. I'm sure there are other videos available on YouTube of how to use these vintage buttonholers, and you're sure welcome to look at them, and I suggest that you do, because some of them are probably made by people that know how to sew. But I'm going to be following those instructions, and I will put the link again in the description of this video about where to get a free copy of the instruction manual for this buttonholer if you need one. So the first thing that I need to do is to attach this feed cover plate onto the base of the sewing machine. And I will say, by messing around with this, what I found was if you need to move this screw around in the slot, it has to be screwed in all the way. It's really kind of made so it doesn't fall out, but when you back the screw out, it's firmly in that slot. So if you put it in, you can move it to this end all the way, or you can move it to this end all the way. And I found for the 301, either end works good for positioning the plate, because you have to have the little opening centered over the needle hole so the needle of the machine can go through there. So let me move this machine over closer a little bit here, and there's two holes here on the bed for mounting attachments and accessories to the machine. There's two other holes on the bed up here, but those are for oiling the bearings of the horizontal shaft down below. But these front two holes here are threaded so that you can attach things like the feed cover plate. So I'm going to choose to attach it in the hole closest to the needle plate, and just raising the presser foot. And I guess I should take that presser foot off while I'm here, because you do not use it when you use the buttonholer device. So I'll take those off. And in the manual, they put in bold print that this feed cover plate should be used on the machine any time that the buttonholer device is used on the machine. And I kind of wondered about that, because with the 301 you can drop the feed dog. You know, there's that thumb screw, big thumb screw below here, and turning it all the way counterclockwise, you can lower the feed dog. So I thought, well, why go to the problem of attaching this? Why go to the trouble of attaching this if I can just drop the feed dog? But I think this also helps guide the fabric and protect the fabric and the machine as this device actually moves the fabric back and forth. So I think that's why they say to do that. So even with the screw all the way tight, with the pressure bar up, you're going to see that this kind of wobbles a little bit. So I think that that's normal, and I'm just going to lower my needle a little bit and see. Yeah, I just want to be sure that the needle isn't hitting the feed cover, and it's not. Okay, so that's good. Now let's see about mounting this device on the machine itself. And if you remember in the earlier videos, this fork arm slips over this part that sticks out for the thumb screw on the needle holder, and then that activates mechanisms as the needle bar goes up and down. So when we oh, you know what? First, I got to tell you, you need to pick a template. Push this up. You want to put in the template that you're going to need for the size of your button. And because on the original buttonholers it goes in from the bottom, you want to do that, of course, before you mount the buttonholer to the machine. So I found a button in our fix-it drawer here, and I'm just going to measure it. It looks like it's about 1 inch, but I'm going to measure it here and see. Put it up there about the middle, and it looks like about 7/8 of an inch. So I need a buttonhole template that's close to that. And what they say in the manual, let's see, so that would be 7/8 would be 14/16. So this is 13/16. That's too small. 5/16. That's way too small. Let's see. This is 10/16. This one is 1 1/16, so it'll be 17/16 versus 14. It's a little big, I think. So there must be one in my extra. Yeah, here's 15/16. So that's a wee bit bigger, so I think that'll be good. And in the instructions, what they say is this line that's on the back here, and it's got the number 15/16, but that line is for you to show the cut opening of the buttonhole. After you sew the buttonhole and you cut open, that is how big the opening will be, and that you can just put your button up against there to measure. Now when I asked my wife, she said she does that, and she just wants to see a tiny bit of the line. She wants the cut line to be a little bit bigger than the button, so she can get the button in and out, but not too much bigger. So 17/16 would be too big. 15/16 is 1/16 of an inch wider than the button, and that's good. And especially this isn't a flat button, it's kind of got a raised thing going on here. So that is the template I'm going to use, and I'm going to put it in the button holder while I've got it off the machine here. And let's see, it doesn't want to quite go flat, and they say turn the thing a little bit. Sometimes I pull or push there. Now it's in there flat. So, okay. Now I can go about mounting this on the machine. So as I'd started to say, this fork arm, the fork goes over the needle clamp, and I'm just going to manually raise that up a little bit to get some height. And you slide it on from the back, and of course I put that up a little too high, so I'm just going to lower that enough so that I can slip it on there. So it's showing up pretty good. Am I gonna right there, right onto the needle clamp. Now I have to make sure that the shank, well, it has fallen into place around the presser bar, and I want to put this heavy-duty clamping screw in there, and I'm going to lift this up as far as I can onto the presser bar, and that lines up the hole in the shank to the hole in the presser bar. Because as I mentioned in the other videos, the only part of the buttonholer that actually contacts the bed of the machine is the cloth clamp contacting the feed cover. And then I'm going to tighten that real good too. Okay, so I have mounted that now. If I can get any more lighting on here. Whoa. So, got my two threads. I didn't mention this, but you go ahead and thread the machine the way you would for normal sewing. So you run your needle thread and get it ready, and you have your bobbin thread pulled up through the needle plate just like you would for regular sewing. And then they talk about in the video, or the instruction manual, they talk about how to, evenly mark your fabric for where your buttonholes are going to be, and so you know where to start each buttonhole. And I'll let you read the manual for that. But once you're set up like this, you're going to turn that adjusting knob, remember that white plastic adjusting knob, and you're going to bring the cloth clamp forward until the needle is lined up in the very back, and there's a white mark in the center of the cloth clamp here in the front, and there's one in the back. So you're going to take this cloth clamp by turning clockwise with the knob, and now it's in the back and it's starting to turn, and you're going to keep turning it until the needle is lined up with that center mark. Alright, that looks good to me. And then you're going to put your fabric that you're making the buttonhole under here, and you're going to line up the mark you made for the end of the buttonhole, and they tell you how to do this in the manual. And you're just going to lower your needle kind of down to the fabric to be sure that you're on the mark of where that end of the buttonhole would be. I should have put a mark or a line there for you, but once you have that point and your needle lined up, that's when you lower your presser bar. You don't put the needle into the fabric, you just lower the presser bar. Now I remember years ago seeing a video where the lady said to drop the presser bar like that, and she made a big point about drop it. But I don't know why you gotta do that, and the manual just says lower it. It doesn't say anything about dropping, and it talks about there should be sufficient pressure on the presser bar so that the cloth clamp can hold the fabric and move it back and forth. Okay, so you would do that with any sewing project, right? You don't want too much pressure on your fabric or too little. So once you've lowered it, now you want to adjust again with the adjusting knob to bring this needle up to the front, or actually move the cloth clamp to the back just past the point of middle. So as you start turning the knob now, the fabric is going to move and it's going to come up, and when it hits the center point at the end of the template, it's going to just start coming around the corner, and as soon as it turns that corner, you stop. So this is the starting point of the thread. Even though you lined up the fabric with the starting point of your buttonhole in the back there, this is the starting point of the actual sewing of the buttonhole. And now you've got to bring up the bobbin thread just the same way you would bring it up through the needle plate. You hold on to your needle thread, rotate the hand wheel towards you, and bring up that bobbin thread up through the cloth. So you have both threads up above. So they're above the cloth and they're above the cloth clamp. Okay. Okay, I just wanted to reposition this a little bit before I started. See, there was one other thing I think is they say don't try and guide the fabric as it's making the buttonhole. Just let the cloth clamp and the device itself do that. So let's give it a shot here and see if we can make a buttonhole. And they say for a nicer looking buttonhole you can go around 2 times. So I think I'll do that. Let's see. Ta-da! Yeah, I think that's a good advice to go around twice. It makes it look a little bit more like a satin stitch. So with my take-up lever all the way up, so my needle thread's not stuck on the hook, I should be able to slide this out now, and we can take a better look at What do you think? For somebody like me, it looks fabulous. Yay. Okay. Let me get something here to close this off, because I wanted to cut through it and try the buttonhole, but I'm worried that I will cut right through the top of the buttonhole when I cut the fabric. So I thought I could do this. I thought if I stuck a pin, I don't have a pin, so I'm just going to take an old needle and put it up here at the top of the loop to use as a stop, kind of like that, I think. And I'll get my seam ripper and see if I can cut that open there. Okay, pull that out. So there's my buttonhole. Where's my button? Here's my button. Guess this would come through from the back. Boy, this is easier to do when you're wearing the item. But yeah, it comes through. It's a little snug, but you know this stuff is going to fray out and can be trimmed off. But I would say that is a good size for that button. A little snug going through, but then it's going to look like that. Okay, I can do a buttonhole. How about that? I'm shocked. Wait till my wife sees that. She'll say, "Who made that for you?" Okay, so now with these older style buttonholers like this was the only not so efficient part. Was if I want, which I do, I want to make a different style or size of buttonhole, I've got to take the whole thing off the machine to be able to change the template. I'll be showing you in a later video the professional buttonholers that they made later. They wiggle this off here and pull it off. They made it so that the top opened up and you could just change the template on the top, and that was a very good idea. The problem is those require a zigzag machine. They came out about the time of the touch and sew, I believe. What I was looking for was one of the keyhole style. Yeah, here's one of the keyhole style right here. This is a 5/8 or 10/16. You see that little circle on the end of that line? On the back side, that identifies it as a keyhole. And of course here you can see how it does bump out for about half of a circle there. So let's change that style here. Let's take this out. I'm not zoomed in, am I? No, just close. Okay. Let's push this up and take that out. Just pinch it like that. Take out that one and put in the other. Oh, and this one went in flat for me. So that was nice. Get this up here, and now I will put it back on, put the forked arm back onto the needle clamp, and position that shank onto the presser bar and push the whole thing up on the presser bars to line up the holes, and should allow me to put the clamping screw in. And tighten it up. Now, there's one thing I should mention here. On the machine, there's actually a thread cutter. It ships with a little thread cutter that's when I bought the machine, it was in the accessory box, and I didn't bother to put it back on. But you'll see it on your machine, and it's a little stiff metal that slides up onto the bottom of the presser bar and kind of has a triangle off of the back, and that's a thread cutter. And in the manual it says if the thread cutter interferes with installing this, if it sticks out the back too much, you can just take the thread cutter and move it to the left so that it's not up against the buttonholer there. So I thought I would mention that in case you're looking at your machine and you've got the thread cutter and I don't. So okay, make sure I'm on here good. Yep. So now following this, I'll turn the knob clockwise until the cloth clamp, whoops, I went a little too far. I want that sits in the back. Cloth clamp to come forward until the needle's in the back, but in the center. You don't go around the corner like you do in the front. And this is to position the fabric, right, at the start of where you've marked your buttonhole. Of course, I didn't mark any, so I'm just going to pretend it's there, bring down my needle and say, yeah, right there is where I want it. So I'll now lower the presser bar because I have my starting point for that. And then I will turn that adjusting knob to bring this up to, so my needle will be up in the front of the cloth clamp, and just turn the corner to start down the left side. And that's the starting position to sew the buttonhole. And then I need to bring up the bobbin thread through the cloth. So I'll go down, turn the hand wheel, go down and bring it up. Just like raising it up out of the needle plate before you start sewing. And this I think is where sometimes I have moved the fabric a little bit. There. I get a little slack here, a little slack from the bottom bobbin. Okay, and just to test my theory that this doesn't really matter because the device is doing all the work, I'll put it up in reverse. But it's not going to matter because the feed dog cannot touch the fabric because I have my feed cover plate in place. So let me just get started with this. Oh yeah, there it's making that keyhole shape at the top. And I'll come back around and start down the left to finish. Whoops. Okay. Stop with my take-up lever up. Raise that. Slide that out. Let's trim off. Now in the book, they show fancy ways that you can hold the threads like back behind the needle, and you can make the zigzag of the buttonhole over the top of those threads to give you a raised buttonhole effect. I'm not a good enough sewer to do that, so I'm not even going to attempt that. But it doesn't look too bad. And I don't know, maybe my tension is a little tight because the cloth looks a little puckered. I don't know if that's the correct term, puckered. But I don't know if that would iron out or smooth out. But that's a keyhole buttonhole. Okay. Okay, I think I'm going to quit while I'm ahead. I made a couple of decent buttonholes, a straight and a keyhole, and then a halfway decent hand sewn one, which would have been better if I followed the directions. And speaking of directions, when you read your manual, you'll see they recommend taking a piece of cloth like this and making a buttonhole for each of your templates and marking what the size is, so that when you have a button, you can just go to your little template cloth and try your button and see what size. Oh, okay, it's a 5/8 button, and pick that template and go. So if I really sewed and made buttons once in a while, it would be worth it to make a button template on a piece of cloth. It saves some time. But don't forget, you can just hold up your button on the back of the template and just so that the cut line barely shows on either side. Maybe I'll do a close-up of that here on the scanner. Maybe I can figure out how to scan that so that the cut line shows just barely on either side. That's the best fit for your button. Okay, and then in the manual, which I don't know how many pages is this, 20 some pages, everything I've showed you here, there's still a lot more to go. They tell you how to make buttonholes if you're using heavy fabric. You can use cellophane or plastic to protect delicate material while you're making a buttonhole. They explain how to do that. You can make extended buttonholes by using the 1 1/16 and just sewing the 1 inch down the side, and then using that adjusting knob and adjusting things around, and then continue that 1 inch that you started. Maybe you need an 1.5 inch buttonhole or 1 3/4, so you got a giant button on a belt just for style, and you need a 2 inch buttonhole. It tells you how to make extended buttonholes, and it explains it real well. And yeah, it goes on a little bit more here. whip stitch buttonholes, whatever that is, pearl buttonholes. They explain that and how to make those. Then you've got your parts diagram and numbers, and then the name of that. So if you ever have a part wear out or break, can help you to know what to look for when you buy a used vintage part. And then on the back they talk about the lubrication that I've mentioned before, where you take the adjusting knob off and that one screw, and they tell you, you know, put grease here, oil here. Well, they call motor lube, but like I said, I've just put grease at every location, and I put oil at every location, and it didn't seem to make any difference in how it worked, you know. But that's why I suggest getting that, because it's just full of information for people who really sew. And as you know, to take this off, we just remove the clamping screw here, and it's got to come all the way off so you can take the shank off of the pressure bar. Just wiggle that off, and then you can pull the fork arm right off of the needle clamp there. And I will show you one little thing. Let me show you one thing here about storing this. When you go to fit this back in the box, there's a reason why that 1 1/16 template comes. Is this here? No, let me find that. There's a reason why that comes mounted into the machine already, if I can find it. 1 1/16. Yeah. And that's because to store this in the little treasure chest, what you do with the 1 1/16 template in is that you want to turn that adjustment screw and draw the cloth clamp all the way in. And if you have a shorter template in there, it's not going to draw in as far. And with the 1 1/16 and the cloth clamp pulled all the way back, then the buttonholer will fit perfectly in the space here. Okay, and if you have a different template in there, this is what you're going to get. It's like this, and it won't sit in there right. It won't, you know, people try and fold it up and stuff like that. So if you like to store it in the treasure chest, put the 1 1/16 template and turn the adjusting knob until the cloth clamp is all the way drawn in. Then it will fit in here perfect. And you can store your originals in here or any place you want. I guess if it's yours, it's up to you. You can, if you have the extra 9, or if you're fortunate enough to have the eyelet, of course it has its own little box. Lucky you. Can you tell I'm jealous? And let's go ahead and remove the feed cover plate, because that actually goes in the bottom of the treasure chest. When you whoops, boy, that screws in there pretty tight still. When you store everything back in there. And of course, storing your buttonholer is just going to be like putting a dust cover on your machine. You know, it's, if you keep it stored in there, it's gonna attract less dust and so forth, and less likely to get knocked off your sewing area and dropped on the floor or something like that. So the way that this goes in here is with the screw end towards you, like that. It's just made to sit right in that little space right there. And then if I can find the clamping screw, here it is. Let's get the machine. That little hole space right there is where that goes, so you don't lose that. And then the machine is, the buttonholer sets right in. Now, some people have a tendency to try and put this up here to hold it, and I don't recommend that, because what happens is this gets all chewed up over the years and stuff, especially in the Jetson style cases. I'll show you later. So if you want to keep this in here, just rest it right on the top like that, just so the edge is inside this brace. Okay, and then look, it closes up all the way around. Very nice. You're not, you'll see some of these have cracked and splits because people didn't load it back in there right. So that's making buttonholes by an amateur with the buttonholer that's made for the straight stitch slant needle 301, 404, and 604. So thank you for tuning in. I hope you'll come back for part 4, which will probably be the last, and I'm just going to give some, show you the other buttonholers that I have, and explain what machines those are for, and show you the difference in how, kind of how you can tell which one is which. So I hope you'll check back with me on that. Thanks for watching, and take care.